South Dakota has just one person on death row, the now 44-year-old Briley Piper, who was sentenced to die for the 2000 murder of Alan Pogue.
But the state has yet to carry out his execution, and Piper has a hearing later this month in Sioux Falls. In tonight's Eye on KELOLAND, Dan Centella looks back at the case and looks ahead to what's next.
Higgins Gulch in western South Dakota was where the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office found the body of 19-year-old Alan Pogue back in April of 2000. But it was only thanks to tattoos and fingerprints that he could even be identified. Court papers say Pogue's face was, quote, unrecognizable because of the injuries he had suffered. 3 suspects emerged: Briley Piper, Elijah Page, and Daryl Hoadley. But, per court documents, Piper was the leader in this case in the planning, preparation, and execution of the murder, kidnapping, robbery, burglary, and theft. Hoadley is now serving a life sentence for the murder, while Page was executed in 2007 for his role in it. Piper pleaded guilty to murder, waived his right to a jury, and the court sentenced him to death. But today, nearly a quarter of a century since Alan Pogue died, Piper is still alive, and it's not yet clear when he may die. Piper's case has been before the South Dakota Supreme Court more than once. The court reviewed his case and sent it back for resentencing. But a jury also sentenced him to die, and the state Supreme Court upheld that sentence. In 2018, the state's highest court considered Piper's argument that his original guilty pleas weren't done intelligently and voluntarily.
We know that Briley Piper did not adequately understand the consequences of his guilty plea when he walked in 2001.
The torture inflicted upon Alan Pogue was unprecedented in this state's history.
The state Supreme Court eventually decided that Piper's pleas were both voluntary and intelligent.
This case had originally resulted in the death penalty by sentencing from the judge. Ultimately, through the state court process, it was determined that it must come from a jury. So ultimately, there were some related delays, and then the federal system has had delays because of COVID.
South Dakota Attorney General Marty Jackley is one of the parties asking a judge to dismiss Piper's claims that he hasn't received due process in this case. That hearing is set for the final day of this month in Sioux Falls.
There is some remaining claims, we call them the exhausted claims pertaining to due process, that are set for hearing here yet this month on February 28th. We feel comfortable that he has received due process by the state court judges and the South Dakota Supreme Court, and that this case is nearing conclusion.
Jackley sees the case of South Dakota's only death row inmate eventually going to Washington.
We anticipate going to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, which will take about a year, and then he will likely seek a United States Supreme Court ruling that will also take about a year. So we're a couple of years away yet. However, there's some finality coming for Alan Pogue's family. It's moving in the right direction.
While the case's entire future isn't yet settled, Alan Pogue never had a future beyond his 19th birthday.
My son's life was cut way too short. He was never able to marry and have children to give me grandchildren. That's something I can only vision in my mind.
And Piper's case will continue to have our attention in 2025 and likely beyond. With Eye on KELOLAND, I'm Dan Centella.
Piper's hearing in Sioux Falls will be at 9 in the morning of Friday, February 28th at the federal courthouse downtown.